Hi friends, welcome to my channel. I'm Katie and you're watching KatieBugKnits, and today I have something very exciting for you. I have a little tutorial on how I made this doll sweater. I will share with you the pattern that I used and the supplies that I used. So if that sounds interesting and fun and you want to make one, then stay right here. For the supplies, you're going to need at least 10 grams of fingering weight yarn. I would suggest you could get a mini, that's a 20-gram mini, and maybe make two. This is what I'm holding right here. If you went to a yarn shop and you wanted to get a mini skein of fingering weight yarn, this is normally how they come, and they're wound up like this, and you can just place it around two chairs and then wind it up into a little ball. And then the needles that I'm using today, these are called Addi Flexi Flips. These are a bamboo needle. These are a 3mm, it says a US 2, but I think technically that'd be like a 2.5 in US size if you used a different needle. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, I have a very small crochet hook, and it's a size C crochet hook, and it's just used for finishing. This isn't something you absolutely need, but if you have one, then it's handy. You'll also need a tape measure or some kind of ruler so that you can measure your work as you go. Scissors for cutting your yarn. A tapestry needle for sewing in your ends, and stitch markers. I used the light bulb markers with little charms that have A, B, C, and D on them. You can also use plain light bulb markers or any other stitch marker that you have. You just want one that looks different for your beginning of round marker. And then the pattern that I used is a free pattern on Ravelry. It's called Mini Sweater Ornament with Cables by Emily Lewis. Her gauge for the pattern is 8 stitches per 1 inch of knitted stockinette. With the needles that I used, I was able to get her gauge as well. So if that helps when you're making your sweater, to make sure you get it to fit right. To begin, I'm using a Longtail Cast On, and that just basically means that you're going to have a long tail, and I like to keep that tail about 3 times the length of the circumference you're casting on for, plus a little extra just to be safe, so you have plenty to hold on to. Here's how I do it. First, I make a slip knot. Once I place the slip knot on my needle, then using my thumb and my ring finger, I place them together so they're touching, and then I push them between the 2 strands of the yarn. We have 2 strands of yarn, so the top one is our working yarn and the bottom is our yarn tail. We're going to scoop the needle under the thumb strand and then over the finger strand. And then once you do that, you drop the stitch off your thumb. Just keep repeating that until you've got 30 stitches. Now we're going to slide 15 stitches over to the second needle. That's what I'm doing here. And it makes it easier to cast them onto one needle and then just slide them onto another. We're going to join in the round. It's very important that you keep the stitches straight, that you do not twist it. You do not want to twist it when you start joining in the round. And that just means that we're taking that flat piece and we're joining it to create a circle. Now the stitches that we're going to do is a twisted rib. So that first stitch was a knit stitch, and I knit it with the yarn going over the top of the needle. And now I'm moving my yarn to the front of my work, and I'm going to purl the next stitch. And I'm going to continue to do a knit and purl until I've come back to the beginning of my round. So when we say twisted rib, it basically means that instead of when I'm knitting, instead of pulling the yarn underneath the knit stitch, I'm laying it over the top of the knit stitch, over the top of that needle. And knit and purl until you get to the end of the row. I'm tying a loose knot in the end of my yarn just so I don't mix it up with my working yarn. I really should have done this at the very beginning of the project. Normally I do, I just must have forgotten. It's just a tip that I use for making sure that I don't knit the wrong yarn. I mean, we've all done it, but it's still annoying to rip those stitches out if we don't have to. So now we're going to do the setup row for our Raglan Increases. So we are going to, according to the pattern, we want to knit 2 and then place our first marker. It's nice to have a different marker on this one so you know where the beginning of round is. The other ones can look all the same as long as you at least mark this one as your beginning of round. So 2 stitches, beginning of round place marker. I'm using a place marker that has an A on it just to make it easier for you guys to keep track of where my place markers are. Then we are going to knit 10 stitches and place our second place marker. And then there will be 3 remaining stitches on this needle, and you'll knit those as well. And we're going to repeat the exact same for our second needle. So we're going to knit 2 stitches, place our third place marker, knit 10 stitches, and place our fourth place marker. All right, now that our setup rows have been completed, we can move on to our Raglan Increases. We're going to use a knit front and back increase. For this technique, we're going to knit the stitch like normal, but don't slide it off your needle just yet. Instead, insert your needle into the back of that same stitch and knit it again. Then you'll slide it off and you can see that we have created 2 stitches out of 1 stitch. And you're going to want to do a knit front and back on each side of all of the place markers. For the next row, you're just going to knit all the stitches. That will resolve all the new stitches that you added with your knit front and back increases. Now you'll continue doing an increase row and followed by a knit row until your final count is 20 stitches for the front and 20 stitches for the back and 15 stitches for the sleeves. So the sleeves are on the ends. So using my place markers as a guide, from A to B is the front panel. From B to C is a sleeve. From C to D is the back panel. And from D to A is the other sleeve. And now we're going to separate for sleeves. So what I'm going to do is remove the D marker, knit until marker D, remove the marker, and then the rest of those stitches that are on that needle, I'm going to put on a light bulb marker, but you can put them on waste yarn, whatever is easy for you, but we're going to remove them from our working yarn so that we can create the torso. So we're going to move those stitches that were on the end from the end of that needle from D, and then we're also going to remove the end of the stitches from the end of the needle until the marker A. And then we're going to join the body in the round from where the stitch marker D was to where A is. And now the sleeves on that waste yarn or the light bulb markers, those are now a sleeve. We're going to do that same process when we get to the other side. So we'll knit all the way across from our marker A to B, and then once we get to marker B, we are going to take it off the needles and we are going to put a stitch marker or waste yarn. We'll take those stitches off. I'm using light bulb markers. I just find it a little bit smaller so it's less fiddly. Since this is such a small project anyway, kind of keeps something from bulky being in the way when I'm knitting. But it can be a little fiddly to work those stitches off. If you have any problems getting the stitches off the light bulb marker, just put them on a really small knitting needle and then transfer it over to the needles that you're working with. And we're just going to remove all of those sleeve stitches and join the body in the round. Now we're just going to do a knit stitch all the way around in the round for the body. And the pattern says to knit for 1 inch from the underarm. The marker that I'm placing on the front of the little sweater is just a place marker so that I know this is the front of my work, so I don't get confused on where my beginning of round is. That can be helpful to help you keep track of where you're working, but it's not necessary. So I am just going to continue working in the round. I'm going to knit mine for about 1.5 inches just to make the sweater the right size for the doll. But whatever doll you're putting it on, you might want to make sure it's the right length. So once the length is as long as you want it, I say 1.5 inches is just about perfect. Then we're going to start doing the ribbing again. So again, I'm doing the twisted ribbing for the hem. Do whichever ribbing you've already done for the neckline, but it's knit 1, purl 1 for all 30 stitches. You're going to do 2 rows of ribbing, and then on that 3rd row we're going to bind off in pattern. So we're going to knit 1, purl 1, and then pull the other stitch over the stitch we just made to bind off. Now once you've bound off all of your knit and purl stitches, then that last little tail, this is where a small crochet hook comes in handy. This crochet hook is a size C, and if you put it just in one of the little, actually this one might be a larger one. The one I end up using later on in the video is a size C, and it was perfect for this tiny yarn. But you want to pull it through one of the loops close to that, because once you cut that yarn off the end and you pull it through, that yarn is going to fold over the waistband that you just bound off. So you don't want it to be too far from your starting point. But if you move it over just a tiny bit, like 1 stitch, it helps it not to stick out. It helps lay that last stitch down flat. Once you get the hang of it, it looks really nice. And then once we finish all of that, we're just going to use our tapestry needle and we're going to sew in all of our ends that we have so far. So this would be the neckline and the body. And then the next step is knitting the sleeves. The first thing we're going to do is remove one of the light bulb markers, and you want to be very careful holding the stitches. Sometimes it helps if you kind of pinch the stitches as you're pulling out the stitch marker. Another tip is using your knitting needle and twisting it back and forth to make sure that it gets through each of the stitches. Another thing that I've done sometimes is use a much smaller needle and then transfer it to that needle that I'm using. So what we're doing now is we're picking up one stitch in the underarm on one side, and then on the other side of the underarm we're going to pick up another stitch, and then in the second round we're going to knit those together. So we currently have 15 stitches on our sleeves. We're going to add 2, so it'll make it 17, and then we're going to decrease 1 by knitting 2 together, and that'll make it 16. So then we have an even number for doing our knit 1, purl 1 when we go to finish off our sleeve. So you will just continue knitting in the round until the sleeve is the length that you want it to be. You could measure your doll's arm to see how long their arm is, so you know exactly where you want it to lay. This sleeve is 4 inches in length, and it's a long sleeve, so it's on the longer side. So if you have a doll that has longer arms, that's gonna fit. I think if you were knitting this for a Ken doll, the length of the arms still works, but you might want to knit it a little bit longer in the body. It's long enough, but it might look better if you knit it just a little bit longer. And my little trick for getting the sleeves the same length is folding it over and seeing where it lands. But you can just use measuring tape as well. It's just if you are sitting somewhere and you don't have your measuring tape handy, that also works. And then for finishing the sleeves, I do the same twisted bib that I did on the neckline and the hemline. And you just knit 1, purl 1, 2 rows of that, and then the third row is the bind off. So I want to tell you about another way that I altered this pattern. So for instance, this little dress right here. This is the sweater pattern, but I shortened the sleeves and I made the body longer. I made a wider ribbing, and I did put a slit in here. So in order to put the slit, what you would do is you stop knitting in the round, and you would, at your beginning of round, you would go ahead and purl the stitches, and then on the next row knit the stitches, then purl the knit, and that will continue the stockinette stitch. I just thought this was so cute, but you don't need the slit. I wasn't sure, so I went ahead and put it in, but now that I'm done, I think it would have been just as cute and just as functional because there's so much stretch to this fabric. This is my all-time favorite project that I have worked on. I absolutely love this little sweater dress. And the yarn that I used was like a variegated yarn, and it naturally striped like this. So cute. Here's another variation I did, and it's just a simple sweater. I just used a different variegated yarn. It's the same pattern. I made it a little shorter. You can see it's a little bit shorter than this one. I don't know if you can tell. Not by much, but you could make it cropped, make it really short. I think my favorite variation is this Ken one, if I can see it. This one's so fun that it fits Ken too. I did make his sleeves shorter. So if you want to knit a long sleeve for Ken, make sure the sleeves are long enough. You'll probably have to hold it up because I think his arms are longer than Barbie's. Like if we do them shoulder to shoulder. They are quite a bit longer. So he will need longer sleeves if you want a full length sleeve. So, oh my goodness. I absolutely love it. I can't stop knitting up these sweaters. I have a whole stack here. I mean, here's where I used 2 different colors of yarn. Several of these. This one I did a little variegation where I alternated the stitch colors. So I tell you what, these are really addicting. So once you start knitting them, you may not be able to stop. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below if you're gonna make one or if you had made one before. And definitely subscribe if you wanna see what else I have coming. If you need some supplies, some yarn, and you're local to Wisconsin like me, check out this next video. I've got the shop for you.